Hi everyone, my name is Siraz Abrams and welcome to another Sony Alpha webinar. I'm a Sony Alpha brand ambassador along with my wife Fatima. We are wedding photographers based in Durban, South Africa. Today's live stream is all about choosing your next wide angle to purchase. Firstly, I'd like to thank you guys for joining us, and I hope that you find this webinar informative. If there's any feedback that you want to give, there is a space to ask questions, there's a space to give comments. Whatever feedback you guys want to give, we really do appreciate this. Even though it is a webinar, we at least try and keep it a bit more interactive. So the more questions you ask, the better for us. So like I said, today's webinar is all about choosing the right wide angle lens as your next purchase. But before we go into that, like I mentioned, there's a section for Q&A. And that's where you can just put any questions that you do want, right? One thing as well, Sony has given everyone 10% cash back on any of their Sony purchases. Now, what Sony has done is they've created a website where you would purchase the Sony equipment and you pay full price. You go onto the website www.cashbacks.co.za and you claim back 10%. If you use the promo code TTL, you would get a 10% discount on your purchase. And one thing to be cognizant of, though, is it's only valid until the 10th of November, and it does not apply to the Sony 400mm G Master lens, as well as the 600mm and the 20mm G Master lenses. So there are 3 exclusions to this promo. Right, moving on. Why would you choose a wide angle lens? If you look up at the screen, there are a few reasons or a few genres listed. The first one being landscapes, second one being astrophotography, third being architecture, travel, weddings, and portraits. If you look at the first 3, in most cases, they do not include human subjects. So for landscape photographers, a landscape photographer is someone who wants to get as much into his shot as possible. If he's shooting vistas, if he's shooting forests, if he's shooting oceans, or even the night skies, you want to get a lens that is quite wide, but that gives you good quality images as well. I'm not saying you can't shoot landscapes with a longer lens, but in most cases, a wide angle lens is what you would go for. The same would apply for astrophotography. Astrophotography as well is normally wide angle lenses, good image quality, not so much chromatic aberration, all these things that come into it. But normally astrophotographers prefer wide angle lenses. The same goes for architecture as well. If you are taking images of buildings, you need a nice wide angle lens to try and get most of the building in frame, or at least an interesting bit of the building in frame. And then travel photography, self-explanatory. You're going traveling, you want to do a bit of landscape, you want to do a bit of architecture, there's a bit of portraiture and all of that. The last 3 lenses, though, I should say the last 3 points that are up, though, is something that I want to emphasize on, because those last 3 points are basically where is the kind of photography that I do and my wife does. The first 3 genres we dabbled in a bit. And there are other Sony Alpha ambassadors, especially with astrophotography, whose webinars you can go and look up on the Sony Alpha Middle East page. So just to take it one step back, when it comes to lens choice, I think lens choice is one of the most spoken about topics or discussions in a lot of forums. But even though it's spoken about so often, because of the amount of DMs we still receive up until today about lens choice, the amount of DMs we're receiving, the amount of times it pops up in forums, we've decided we'd focus on wide angle lenses for now, and then show you what the Sony lineup is, or what at least some of the G Master lenses that Sony has. These lenses are, or I should say lens choice in a lot of times or a lot of aspects is more important than camera choice. I say in most cases though. I'm not saying that camera choice is not important, but if you take a really crappy camera with a good lens, you can still walk away with a good image. You need to decide up front, firstly, when it comes to lens choice, what do you want from your image? And that's where your focal lengths come in. Do you want wide open vistas? Are you shooting natural portraits? Are you shooting environmental portraits? Do you like close-ups of your subjects? All of these depend on your lens choice. And what we've done is we've had the honor and the privilege, I should say, and the good fortune, I should say, to be able to work with a lot of the Sony lenses, especially the newer ones. And in that way, we're able to give you feedback on how we find the lenses, and then also perhaps you can take our experience and that can be a deciding factor in your lens choice. So let us move on to the next slide so we get into it. The first lens that we want to tackle is the 12 to 24 G Master lens or G series lens. This is the 12 to 24. As you can see, it's quite a big lens and it's quite heavy. And the reason it's heavy is that front element is huge. If you look at this focal range, it's a very, very versatile range. A lot of people might not think it's a good lens or a versatile lens, but if you look at the points that I have up there, it's the world's fastest and widest f2.8. It gives you excellent edge-to-edge sharpness. It is big and heavy, and I added that there because people should know that this is a big lens because of the wide end being 12, and it's heavy. It's got excellent distortion control. Distortion is one of the things that wide angle lenses, it's inherent that a wide angle lens would have distortion. It's just physics. You can't beat physics, you can't beat the optics. So there will be some distortion in it. But what Sony's managed to do with all their lenses, especially the wide angle lenses, I should say, the distortion control is absolutely amazing. I will be showcasing a few of our images shortly, and just to show you the kind of images that are taken on some of these lenses. So you get excellent distortion control, and it's one of the few f2.8 lenses in this range. Now, normally I think most manufacturers go down to 14. Sony's taken the step to do a 12 to 24, and it was a good choice because the difference from 12 to 14 or from 14 to 12 is not that small. It's quite big. So if I show you the next scene, this was taken at a wedding, in fact, that we shot over the weekend, and as you can see, it was shot at 12mm at f4.5. Now you can see the angle of view is enormous. It's amazing. Your peripheral vision, this is borderline what we see as human beings without the distortion. So you can see how this would work in favor of landscape photographers as well. And not only that, I'm not sure how good the image quality is, but the image quality for us out of camera is absolutely amazing. We were blown away by what we got over the weekend from this lens. The next scene as well is taken from the same function. Now, what we've done, what Fatima and myself like doing, is we like pushing ourselves in terms of our photography. And then if you don't push yourself, you don't know how far you can go or what you can do. Generally speaking, portrait lenses or portraits are taken with much longer lenses. So you're looking at, some people would do portraits with 35mm, but we're looking at 50 and 50mm and above, where 50mm, 75mm, 90mm is the sweet spot, 135mm up to about 200, 300mm. What we've done is we've taken this 12 to 24 and we actually challenged ourselves in terms of, would we be able to take portraits, environmental portraits, with this lens? What you see on the screen now is a portrait taken with the 12 to 24. And again, the image quality is absolutely amazing. As you can see, we managed to fit the bride the decor in the background and the decor that was hanging from the ceiling into one scene. So guys, I know there are photography rules, and a lot of people will say, yes, there are rules you need to follow and so forth, but don't be afraid to break the rules. When you start breaking the rules, that's when you start pushing yourself and challenging yourself, and that's when you start growing, because that's when you know what you can break and what rule is not really meant to be broken, which shouldn't be broken. So this this portrait of the bride is one of the rules where, or one of the times where Fatima decided she's going to use 12mm, break the rules, and do an environmental portrait, and we were blown away. The thing to remember with these lenses is, because of the wide angle of view and because of distortion, you need to have your subject dead center. If you look at the bride's face, she's roughly in the center, so you get very little distortion on the bride itself, and that's how you get to work with these lenses to do these kind of portraits. Fatima did a fashion shoot about a week ago, and again she took the lens with, and it's like I said, it's normally not a focal length that fashion photographers would use, but as you can see, distortion control is absolutely amazing. If you look at the lower end where the front of her foot is, you will see that's distortion, a little bit of distortion there, but that's just a little bit of stretching because her foot was closer to the edge of the frame. But we're happy with the shot. The client is very happy with the shot because she's totally blown away. She never saw images like this shot at these focal lengths. The next set of images, you can see the left image is the uncropped image. So on the left hand side, you can see it's shot at f2.8, shot at 12mm, the full body shot. And what Fatima then did was, in post, she cropped the image. And if you look at the cropped image as well, it's a beautiful fashion portrait. Or leave fashion out of it, it's a beautiful portrait. So it can be used. Just shows that these lenses can be used to do portraiture or fashion work and so forth. So again, just keep pushing yourselves, guys. Next lens up in the lineup is the 20mm. This is a G series lens. This is not a G master lens, but this is the 20mm f1.8. This was a focal length that I wasn't really interested in, neither was Fatima. I always found that 20mm was a bit of an awkward focal range. But after using this lens, again, we were absolutely astounded. As you can see up on the screen, we have the points. Edge-to-edge sharpness is brilliant. Excellent distortion control. It's light and compact. As you can see there, that's the size of the lens. It's got extremely fast autofocus, excellent bokeh. One of the images or one of the videos that we are going to showcase later, you'll be able to see the bokeh. And it's got a dedicated aperturing on the, I don't know if you guys can see that, it's got a dedicated aperturing on the lens itself. So what you can do is you can either control your aperture by turning the aperturing, or there's an auto function on there. It's an A on the actual aperturing. If you put it into A, you now control the lens or the aperture from your camera. So either way, you can either control it with the aperturing or from your camera. It does have a D-click motor. There's a little, let's hope this can focus on there. Yeah, it's got a little D-click switch. What that does is, if the D-click switch is off, your aperturing turns very smoothly. So it's excellent for video. So while you're recording, you can actually just change the aperture with the aperturing without having to move your camera, and in that sense you don't get that little bit of camera shake. When it's switched on, you do get, I don't know if you guys can hear that, you do get a little click as you change the aperture. Photographers would likely use that. With the D-click off, videographers would prefer to use it with the D-click off, I should say. So like I said, it's got excellent bokeh, it's got a dedicated aperturing, and it's dust and moisture resistant. So that's a very important thing. I know that mirrorless cameras have been criticized for being a bit not protected against dust and moisture, but like these cameras, or I should say these lenses from Sony, the new range of lenses, as well as some of the old ones, they've got some really good moisture protection built into them. This image was taken again over the weekend by Fatima. This was at the bride prep. Now, like I said, I always thought the 20mm was a very awkward focal length to work with. But after seeing the images that Fatima was getting, I changed my mind completely. Again, I made up my mind before even using the lens, and it's something that I realized I shouldn't be doing. I should use the lens and then decide on whether it's awkward or not. But even without using the lens, from the images that Fatima got over the weekend, as you can see in bridal prep, it just gives you a nice overview of what's happening in the scene. You don't have to be too far. One of the issues sometimes is if your lens isn't wide enough and you want to capture the entire scene, then you have to step back and then capture the scene. But that means that you're moving away from your subject. So what this lens does, in fact, what a lot of these wider lenses do is they allow you to get closer to your subject. And for us, the closer we are to our subject, it's the look and feel of the images that we want. We want to be part of the action. We don't want to be standing in a corner and just shooting from one corner, just shooting what we see. We want to be where the action is. When the bride is getting ready, when the makeup is being applied, we always like to be a little bit closer to the subject. And if you look at this image is the perfect example of what we want. Image number 2, also with a 20mm. This was shot at f1.8, and yeah, again, Fatima was very, very close to both the hairdresser or the hair or makeup artist and so forth, and the bride. And again, because of our style of shooting, this lens actually worked out perfectly for us. Yeah, you can see a video of or an image of the wedding cake that the bride had over the weekend. This was shot with a 20mm at f1.8. Again, I'm not sure if the quality of the video can actually show you the details, but the next slide will have a video of just how sharp this lens is. So I'll move on to the next. As you can see, that's f1.8. And look at the bokeh in the background, the lights in the background. You can see how nice and round those balls are, those bokeh balls. So for a photographer, this lens is absolutely amazing. Another shot at this time f3.2, and this again is a bridal portrait. Our brides, we've been very fortunate that the clientele that we have, they spend lavishly on their weddings. So there's a lot to capture, whether it's their decor, their makeup, the hair, the hairstyle they have, the outfits they wear. So if you look at the dress the bride is wearing now, this is normally the size of the dress of the brides that we get to capture. So one of the things is always trying to get the whole dress into an image, and the 20mm just worked out perfectly because once again Fatima didn't need to step too far back from the subject, and she managed to get most of the dress in, as well as getting the decor in the background. One thing to remember with this lens as well is, because of it being 20mm, just make sure your subject is dead center. That's just to ensure that there's no stretching of the facial features or any distortion like that. Even though distortion control is brilliant, just the rule of thumb, just do that. The next scene, next slide. This is a little video of that same image, just to show you. This was shot at f3.2, and as you can see, the detail on the dress that this lens captured is absolutely amazing. There's just so much that you can do with this lens. The image quality is brilliant, the size, the compactness, the bokeh is excellent. It's just it is one of the lenses that actually just blew us away. Before I carry on, guys, I just want to remind you guys of the 10% cashback. If you use the promo code TTL, what happens is you pay full price for your Sony gear. You go to the website www.cashbacks.co.za and use the promo code TTL and claim back 10% of whatever gear you bought. Just be cognizant of the fact that it doesn't cover the Sony F full frame 400mm G Master. It doesn't cover the 600mm G Master, and it does not cover the 20mm f1.8 G lens. So anything else that you guys buy from Sony, any other product you guys buy from Sony, the camera gear you buy from Sony, I should say, you will be able to get 10% cash back. Let me just check if there's any questions. It looks like we are still okay. No questions there. I'm just checking everything else. Any questions coming through? Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. Next up is the 24 f1.4. This is the lens that got me to fall in love with photography again. I'll explain, I'll qualify what I just said. I went through a phase where photography ended up feeling like work because we were busy shooting weddings all the time, and every weekend we would go and shoot a wedding. So it ended up not being a passion anymore. It ended up being a job. The passion didn't go away completely. The passion was still there. And then I had the good fortune of getting a 24mm lens on loan. This was sometime last year. And I started shooting with it, and I just fell in love with this lens. I have always been a 35mm guy. For me, a lot of people say that 50mm is what your eye sees and so forth. I always felt that 35mm is more what the eye sees. So I was always a 35mm guy until I started using this lens. Again, I never expected this lens to be that good. In fact, I never expected this focal length to be a focal length that I enjoy shooting. But when I started using it, it's an absolutely amazing lens. And I know I sound like a stuck record. I keep saying it's an amazing lens, but the whole lineup of Sony lenses are absolutely amazing. Whether it's their bog standard G series lenses or a normal Sony lens, all the way up to the G Master lenses. What Sony's done is Sony's really listened to the consumer. If I look at this lens, for example, one of the inherent, not issues I should say, but one of the inherent characteristics of wide angle lenses is distortion. For example, you would take an image of the horizon, and on a 24mm lens, the horizon would not be straight, it will be bowed slightly. What they've done with the 24mm is they've basically made it something similar to a rectilinear lens, where you take the image and your horizon is bog straight. There's no bowing of the horizon. So in that sense, it helps you a bit in your post-production because you don't have to then do a little bit of distortion control and so forth. So I always maintain what Sony's done is Sony's looked at some of the quirks and issues that photographers face when it comes to certain equipment, and they've tried to just not adjust it but rectify it to make your life that much easier. And in that sense, your workflow becomes a bit more efficient and a bit quicker. So getting back to this lens though, edge-to-edge sharpness, excellent distortion control. I would call it the rectilinear lens. It's lightweight and it's compact. And at f1.8, it is pin sharp. And that's what I like. If someone gives me a lens and the widest aperture is f1.4, I should say, I would shoot at f1.4. That's just how I'm not saying that you should always be shooting at f1.4, but my style of shooting, I love shooting wide open. And this Sony 24mm f1.4 is an absolute cracker of a lens. To showcase some images of this lens, this was shot again over the weekend. This is the bridal bouquet. And at f1.4, it's pin sharp. And the nice thing about these lenses is because you're getting edge-to-edge sharpness, you can actually frame your subject the way you want to. I mean, sometimes you don't always want your subject framed dead center. So you can frame your subject slightly off center and focus on the subject, take the image and still get a sharp image. Whereas previously with certain of the older lenses, you would be a bit wary to do that, because as you get closer to the edges, your sharpness tends to drop off. Not with these lenses though. And that's what makes these lenses so versatile. This was a shot that I actually took also over the weekend, just to showcase. Shot at f1.4, but look at the clarity and the detail on the shoelace. Again, I hope that that YouTube the quality is good, but the clarity that I got from the off the lens of the shoelace of the shoe, absolutely amazing at f1.4, and that's what you need in your images if you think about it. This is a ring shot again from the weekend. What happened was, while I was doing decor shots, I noticed the pattern on the inside of the glasses that were being used. So what I did was I took the lens, or I took my camera, and I shot down into, I basically had the lens on the top of the glass, like you're seeing now, and I shot down the lens. And when I looked at the image, I told Fatima, this will make a very nice ring shot because of the textures and so forth. So when the rings were exchanged and the couple was sitting down, we asked for their rings, and then we went in ahead and did the ring shot. It's something different to the normal traditional ring shot that's being done. The next slide is actually just a video showcasing the original image and then the image. As you can see, that's the uncropped image, and once it's cropped in, this was shot at, I think, f2. Yeah, that was shot at f2. So you can see, let's see, yeah, f2.8 I should say. So you can see the clarity and the sharpness and detail these lenses are able to pick up at f2.8. Just one thing, and it's something that I always mention in any of the webinars or any of the workshop that we have. It's no use having a very good camera and slapping on a dirt cheap lower end lens and expecting good images. If your lens is not able to resolve the full resolution of your camera, then you are wasting that resolution of that sensor. So 24mm shot at f2.8. This was a fashion portrait again that Fatima took. Again, if you look at the angle of view, if you look at the look for distortion, there's virtually nothing. You look at the lines behind the rack, behind the model itself. Those lines, there's no bowing, everything is straight, and that's from a 24mm lens. So it shows you how good this lens is. Same shoot, same model, different outfits. Here you can see the perspective that this lens gives you, and what's nice is it's not too distorted. It doesn't look unnatural. So what you guys should be doing is push yourself. Shoot something that you don't normally shoot. Shoot with a lens that you don't normally use. If you feel uncomfortable, or if you've never shot with a 35mm lens, for example, or a 16mm lens, or a 24mm lens, if you don't have one, go and hire one of these lenses and shoot with it. You don't know what you're capable of unless you actually try it, and that's what we do. So fashion portraits, a fashion shoot, this is for a boutique. Fatima used a 24mm and the results speak for themselves. These are absolutely cracker images. Next slide as well, shot at f2.8. The image on your right is one of my favorite images. In fact, when Fatima was uploading the images to Lightroom, even before she edited the images, I had a look at this image, and what I like is the perspective is so lifelike. It doesn't seem unnatural. So again, guys, don't be afraid of using these lenses for fashion portraits. Moving on to the last lens in the lineup. This lens has been on my camera for, I would say, almost 2 years now. It's one of my favorite lenses. The 16 to 35 focal range for me is one of the most versatile focal ranges ever. This is normally coupled to my A7R III, which is my favorite camera. What I like is, if 35 is too wide for me, I can crop in on my R3 and I still get an 18 megapixel picture. From 35 it goes up to, I think, closer to a 50, between 45 and 50 mil. So I can still get a little bit of a narrower field of view, but I hardly ever do that, because at 35, environmental portraits on 35 mil just look absolutely stunning. You can see the points that I do have up. This lens is a versatile focal range. It's edge-to-edge sharpness. There's little to no chromatic aberration. It's excellent bolt quality. In fact, all of these lenses that I've mentioned all have excellent bolt quality. And it gives you excellent bokeh. And I know bokeh is one of the things that us photographers yearn for. These lenses, there's nothing to worry about in that department. The next slide has got a video of images shot on the 16 to 35. We thought we'd rather just put a video together to show you just how versatile this lens is. There you go, guys. I hope that you enjoyed that series of images. Before I get into questions and answers, there's just a couple of things that I want to mention just about this lens. About a year ago, my wife and I decided, we went on a trip to Turkey, and being photographers, we knew that the first impulse would be to take all the camera gear because there's so much to shoot in Turkey. But we decided, instead of doing that, we would take one camera body each and one lens each. I went for my 16 to 35. Fatima went for her 55mm Zeiss, which is her personal favorite. Well, after her using the 20mm, I'm not sure it's the favorite anymore, but in any case, she took the 55mm Zeiss. The reason I took my 16 to 35 was because one of the things that I wanted to photograph in Turkey was Hagia Sophia. And Hagia Sophia is this massive cathedral with this huge open space in the middle. And I knew that in order to try and capture the vastness of that space, I would need a wide angle. And that's where my 16 to 35 came in. It worked perfectly for me on that trip. I could do my wide angles. In fact, we were fortunate enough to have one of our brides honeymoon in Turkey while we were there. So we actually did a little bit of a post-wedding shoot in Turkey with this couple. And again, I had my 16-35, was perfect for environmental portraits. We got such nice portraits of them just walking down the street and so forth. Why I'm telling you this is because when it comes to your lens choice, you should have some sort of idea in your mind of what you want from your images. What's the look you want from your image? The look, the aesthetic. What's the the look and feel that you want from an image. And that's where your lenses come in. These, I mentioned it right at the beginning of the webinar, a lot of times lens choice is more important than camera body choice. I say again, I'm not saying that camera body is not important, but lens choice is vitally important. And that's why the only way you are going to know what you want from an image is if you're shooting all the time. Always be at it. Always try different focal lengths. You might not be shooting at a certain focal length now, and you might not think that it would be necessary, but once you shoot at these focal lengths that you've never shot at before, you'll be amazed. You might just like that more than what you're currently shooting. So before you make your choice, do your research. If you want, send us a DM. Go onto the Sony Alpha Middle East Alpha Universe website and go and register. There's a wealth of information on that website. All these lives that we are doing, all these webinars that we are doing, they are all available on that website. If you haven't registered, go and do it now. It's not only information from the local South Africa ambassadors, but it's from all the ambassadors for Sony Middle East and Africa. So if you have a question, you'll find an answer for whatever question you have on the Sony Alpha Universe. If just DM us and we can even send you the links to that. So before I get ahead of myself, let me check the questions. We've got 3 questions here. Will this webinar be available to watch later? As I said, I just mentioned now, this webinar will be available on the Sony Middle East Alpha Universe website. So if you did miss the beginning, or if you miss any of the other webinars that Sony has hosted, they are available on the Alpha Universe website. As a beginner, would a wide angle be essential? I would say yes. As a beginner, one of the lenses that you would go for, or that we suggest you go for, is a wide angle lens. A lot of times people will buy cameras with kit lenses, and normally the kit lens would be a 24-70 or 28-70. 24 is wide, but sometimes it's I say for beginners they should actually go for something wide. I know sometimes price is a bit of an issue, because the wider your lens goes, the pricier your lens becomes. But if you get started with a wider lens, I just feel it'll give you that bit more scope in terms of your growth, so that you know what your focal lengths are and how to use your focal lengths. And not only that, how to use distortion. I find that a lot of people are afraid of distortion. A lot of photographers are always looking at, no, the lines must be straight, we need to shoot with a longer lens and so forth. Don't be afraid of distortion. I'm a massive advocate for, and well, I shouldn't say I'm the only one, but most photographers are looking at creating depth in their images. Photography is a very flat medium. You take the image, you either view it on a screen or you print it out. It's a very flat medium. So as a photographer, what you should be doing is you should be looking at creating depth in your images. And what I like doing is I like using distortion to create that depth. I like leading the viewer's eyes to where my subject is, using distortion, using lines, using depth of field. There's a host of tricks. Distortion is one of them. So don't be afraid of distortion. As a beginner, get the widest lens that you can and play around with it. Trust me, in most cases you'll love it. And then there's a final question: what is your go-to lens and why? I think I just explained my go-to lens about 5 minutes ago, but I'll do it again. My go-to lens would be 16-35. I find it very, very versatile. Image quality is brilliant. Lens distortion is brilliant. The weight, it is slightly heavier than a lot of other lenses, but that's because of the focal range that it covers. So for me, my 16-35 is my go-to lens. I can shoot anything with that lens. If I need to do portraiture, I'm able to do portraiture with it. That's why I say it's important to learn to get to know the different focal lengths. Shoot, and push yourself to shoot things that you don't normally shoot. That's when you know you're learning, and that's when you're pushing yourself to progress. We moving on to the next slide. Once again, 10% cashback. TTL is the promo code, and you go to www.cashbacks.co.za. I'm not going to go through the explanation of this again. I've done it twice before, but it is up on the screen. So just remember, it's valid until the 10th of November, and it doesn't include the Sony 400mm, the 600mm, and the 20mm. Guys, that is the end of this webinar. I just want to remind you guys again, the Alpha Universe Middle East Africa, it's a hub for creatives. It contains a wealth of information. Go and register. You can see the URL is up on screen, alphauniverse-mea.com. Like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't only have the South African Sony Alpha and brand ambassadors. It has information and webinars and from the whole of Sony Middle East Africa. So if there is a question you have, trust me, you will find the answer on this page. Do yourself a favor, go and register. When you register, you will get updates for up and coming events. It does have a calendar as well, or a schedule that has all the upcoming events, so you can then plan which events or which webinars you want to connect to and so forth. So that all is available to you once you register. So please do yourself a favor, go and register. And let me just check the questions again. I have okay. Herman, which wide angle prime with the least distortion and smallest focal length would you recommend? Herman, I would say that's entirely up to you. For our style of shooting, Fatima was very happy with the 20mm. Let's see, wide angle prime. Fatima was very happy with the 20mm f1.8, and reason being, she was able to get full length portraits. She was able to get full length environmental portraits, I should say. So it depends on what type of image you want. But I've seen shots with 16mm. I know Sony doesn't make a 16mm, but just as an example, I've seen shots done on 16mm prime lenses. Those lenses, if you know how to work with distortion, then those lenses are absolutely brilliant. So you need to decide what you want from your image. But from our side, I would say prime, that 20mm f1.8 is absolutely amazing. It blew us away completely, and I didn't even want to. When we got the lenses as loan kits, I wasn't really interested in the 20mm until I saw what Fatima was getting with that lens. So have a look at the 20mm f1.8. It's an absolutely amazing lens. Another question from Willie Botas, best in the game, 20 and 24. I totally agree with you, Willie. And sorry, that's Herman. And Willie's asked, what are your thoughts on f4? I don't find anything wrong with f4. Again, I think a lot of people need to realize that when it comes to depth of field, it's not only your aperture that affects your depth of field. It's also the distance to your subject as well. I've shot an image. This was years ago. I shot an image at f14, very close to a subject, and I had a blurry background. So if shooting in low light is what you require, then perhaps f4 might not be good for you, depending on the camera body that you have. But if you look at the Sony Alpha camera bodies, their ISO capability is absolutely amazing. So even at f4, you can shoot at ISOs much higher than you normally shoot at and still get clean images. So I don't see there's anything wrong with the lens with the maximum aperture of f4. Willie again, which wide angle prime with the least distortion? Oh no, okay, we've done that one. Question from Faik. What's your opinion on the extent of distortion on the what's your opinion on the extent of the distortion on the Sony FE 12 to 24 G Master compared to 16 to 35? Obviously, the 12 to 24 on the wider end would be a lot more wide, obviously, than the 16. But in terms of distortion, even though there's more distortion than the 16mm, it's very well controlled. And it's something that I don't think you can bend the rules of physics and optics, I should say, or break the rules of physics and optics. I'm pretty sure Sony is busy working on that now. If you look at their track record and see what they've done over the years, but the distortion difference between the two is noticeable. It's very noticeable, but it's not distracting. It doesn't take away from the image. It doesn't. And yeah, I'm talking about the 12mm. I don't know what time you've joined, but one of the lenses was the 12 to 24 that we showcased right at the beginning of this webinar, and we showcased some of the fashion portraits that we shot with the 12 to 24. So, like I said, if you know how to use the lens, if you know how to work with distortion, and if you have your subject in the center of your frame, then the distortion really doesn't distract from the image. You can get some stunning images if you know how to use all of these factors and add them to your all these factors and use them in your image. And let me just check one more, and that's it. I'm just refreshing to see if there's any other questions. There's no other questions, guys. Once again, thank you so much for joining this webinar. Please feel free to drop us a DM. You've seen our Instagram handle up on the on one of the screens on one of the pages. Drop us a DM if you need to know anything, if you want to chat about the gear, if you need advice on the gear, or even if you just want to chat about photography in general. We always love interacting with fellow photographers. And do yourselves a favor, like I said, go on to the Alpha Universe, Middle East Africa Universe, and go and have a look at all the webinars that have been put up by the other amazing Sony Alpha and brand ambassadors. There's a wealth of information. Any topic that you might have a question on, you'll see that it is covered there. Thanks for joining, guys, and until we see you next time, keep well.